Halo 2 and Halo 3. I've talked about them many times over the 15 plus years I've been on YouTube, because both of them are very important to me, but not for reasons that newcomers might think. Because I've also said many times that those were my two biggest disappointments in all of my years of gaming, which is going on 30 years now. People have asked me why, and I've never given them a direct answer because I can't. Not in a single sentence. Or so I thought until I started brainstorming this video. I thought it was going to be a long, complicated, and convoluted tale, which on one hand it is, but on the other hand there's also a very simple answer. And that answer is they were my first disappointment in gaming that had a major impact on me. My first disappointment goes to Tomb Raider: The Angel of Darkness, but there was a key difference between the two of them. I did beg my parents to buy me a PS2 so I could play Tomb Raider, but by the time I got it, there were other games I was playing and were more interested in, so yeah, I was disappointed with Tomb Raider, but because I didn't lose any money, and had those other games, I didn't care as much as I did when I first wanted a PS2. Now, with Halo 2 and 3, I got an Xbox and a 360 just to play them like I did with Angel of Darkness, but first, I bought those consoles, not my parents. The Xbox I got for short money, but the 360, which I bought in 2007, was still around $400 at the time, and second, I had other games, but unlike Tomb Raider, I was fully expecting Halo 3 to be Jesus Reborn in a disc because my naive teenage mind got fully swept up by the hype train. And when Halo 3 failed to meet my unrealistic expectations, well, I'm pretty sure you guys can fill in the blanks, but you don't have to, because I'm about to do it for you. Because that was the short version. If you want all the details, like it really fucking matters at this point, you need to go back to a lonely little day in 2003 at a Comp USA. I don't remember what time of year it was, but I walked in there and I saw a game on a demo TV that I could pick up and play, and this was the segment I played right here. I played it for a bit and I really liked it, so I asked one of the guys who was working there, "Hey, what is this game?" And he was like, "That's Halo." That was my first encounter with Halo, and it was on the PC no less. Yeah. The bastardized Gearbox port, which I obviously wasn't aware of it at the time. So I got it later that year as a present, and I sank who knows how many hours into it. It was like crack. I couldn't stop playing, and I don't remember why, but Halo became one of my favorite games in my teenage years, although it's not perfect. There's two things that have always bothered me about this game. First off is the Warthog. People say it feels like you're driving on the moon with it. I say it's more like driving on greased ice. I can't stand this Warthog, and I only take it when I have to. That and the 2-weapon limit. I've never loved this, in any game. It's one of the absolute worst things to ever show up in a video game. Unless you're trying to go for something like Rainbow Six, there's no reason a 2-weapon limit should appear at all in a first-person shooter. Some people try to justify this by saying it makes the game more realistic or that it adds a new layer of strategy, to which I say, first off, realism doesn't even remotely apply. You're a superhuman cyborg fighting aliens on a ring-shaped planet and can take a 66-ton tank and flip it right side up no problem. Yeah, that's how much the Scorpion weighs. 66 tons. And yet you can just magically flip it over just like that. And as for this so-called strategy that people talk about, it's the worst kind. You find a new weapon lying on the ground and have to stop to consider how much ammo you have for the two guns you're already carrying, how long this new weapon will last, and if it's even appropriate for the next fight, as if you know what that'll be on your first time playing through. The only thing the 2-weapon rule does is break up the flow of the game, force a huge amount of unnecessary backtracking into the mix, and always leaves me wondering just how much more fun the game would be if I not only didn't have to do this, but also if I had the gun I actually wanted. Yet because Halo popularized it and made lots of money, the shooter genre was defiled for over a decade by this dumb decision. That, and I also stand by the claim I've made throughout the years that there's nothing original or innovative about Halo, because there isn't. Wielding two guns at the same time, vehicles in multiplayer, the 2-weapon rule, regenerating health, Master Chief himself, it's all been done before, and in many cases it's been done better. Even the opening theme to Halo sounds very similar to a song called Mentally Blind by a band named Death. Now, this could just be a funny coincidence, but I'm pretty sure it isn't because one of my fans asked Martin O'Donnell this on Twitter. And look how he responded. Nice, huh? That right there speaks louder than any yes or no he could have responded with. And you know what the really fucked up thing is? Chuck Schuldiner, the guitar player, he died of brain cancer in 2001, just after Halo released, partly because he couldn't afford the cancer treatment. A whole bunch of people had to get together and auction off a bunch of his personal items to try and raise money for him. Yet the guy who ripped him off made millions. Even the Halo ring itself was already introduced 30 years prior with a book called Ringworld, which I recommend reading, by the way, if you like science fiction. However, I will say that Halo was revolutionary in one aspect. For the longest time, the status quo was that a first-person shooter couldn't work on a console, and every attempt that I know of leading up to Halo was a failure, at least in the modern sense that we know of. I don't know if Halo was the first console shooter that worked in the way that we know of, but I do know that it was, at the very least, the first console FPS to successfully sell the idea that a console first-person shooter could work. And if nothing else, Halo is a well-made, well-put-together game that brought me who knows how many hours of entertainment as a teenager. So when I heard there was a sequel, I was all gung-ho. Until I found out there was no computer version, not till 2007, and it needed Vista, which I never got because it was a pile of junk. So I said to myself, okay, I need an Xbox. Got my first job in 2006 and bought one shortly after. I also picked up a copy of the special edition of Halo 2, which I still have, and proudly use as a coaster for my drinks to this day. So anyways, I start playing and everything just feels off. Like, I can't specifically point out what felt off because it's not any one thing or even a few things, it's everything. Nothing about this game feels like Halo. If you played the cursed mods, that's kind of what it was like, except this wasn't the mod, this was the official thing. Everything from the pacing of the game to the way the guns behaved, the sound effects for them, the way the enemies reacted, nothing felt right. I'll give you an example. In Halo 1, all of the guns felt like they had a certain purpose. They were good against certain types of enemies in certain situations, and in others they would either be not as good, be outright useless, or bog you down. Now couple that with the pacing of the game, and the progression of how the enemies were introduced to you as you went further down the game. You know, where more powerful enemies started being revealed, and namely with the elites. You could tell by the color of their armor how the blues got less common, the red got more common, then you had the gold elites, and then for the final stages of the game, it was nothing but the jet black elites. That's not here in Halo 2. It all feels like everything is just tossed out of a chest right at your feet from the get-go. At least that's what it felt like for me. For example, I found I didn't really need to make any type of distinction between the SMG and the plasma rifle because all I had to do was pick up 2 plasma rifles and I could blast my way through pretty much anything. Now obviously that wasn't going to work for every situation like something that needed a sniper rifle, that's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is that very rarely did I find any need to play to the supposed advantages and drawbacks of every individual weapon like I had to in the first Halo. And keep in mind, I'm playing on Heroic the entire time. That's the default difficulty I use when playing Halo. You know, there used to be a website called Halo2Sucks.com, which you can still find on the Wayback Machine, and I left a link in the description. There's a tab on the left-hand side of the main page called Funny Yet Depressing, and it's a recap about a guy named Master Blaster who gets hired as a Halo 2 consultant. He goes into a meeting room where characters like Duke Nukem, Jar Jar Binks, and Martha Stewart are there as well, because they also got hired as consultants. The lead guy starts talking about what they need to change for Halo 2, and Master Blaster's all like, hey, you don't have to change anything, just add some more stuff and maybe tone down the pistol a little bit, and everyone laughs him off. Then the others start throwing these crazy suggestions around like take away the fall damage, put in more auto-aiming, Jar Jar says he wants a lightsaber like Obi-Wan, and at the end Martha Stewart says, guys, those are just the beginning. Take away everything, and I mean every last little thing. Make it so that Halo 2 doesn't even feel like Halo anymore. Just another shooter with Halo window dressing. Now, it's a made-up tale, obviously, but I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if an actual meeting very similar to this happened, and all those fake character names are just cover-ups for real people, because that's the feeling Halo 2 gives me. It feels like whoever designed Halo 2 thought all of the strong points for Halo 1 were mistakes that needed to be fixed. And not only that, Halo 2 feels very rushed, like it was haphazardly thrown together at the last minute, and I later found out that it actually was. The version of Halo 2 we got was made in 10 months, not 3 years. I found that Bungie dicked around for 2 years until Microsoft found out, put their foot down, and then Bungie had to rush whatever they had out the door. From what I've seen on retrospectives made in recent years, this was a Hail Mary for Bungie because they were primed and ready to go down if this thing failed. So yeah, I bought an Xbox to play Halo 2, and this is what I got. Now, it wasn't all bad because I do have some good memories, not from the single player, but a few from the multiplayer, surprisingly. Whenever I fire up one of those maps on the Master Chief Collection, it takes me right back to 2006. Memories from a much simpler and happier time playing at my friend's house and all the fun that would happen. The screaming, swearing, throwing the controllers, laughter. Those were good times. And not only that, but some of the first friends I ever made on Xbox Live I met on Halo 2. A couple of which I still talk to after more than 16 years, so something good came out of it, but make no mistake, I was pretty bummed out. And with Halo being the new premier franchise I always went to for my gaming needs, I started feverishly following Halo 3. 2006 is when information started leaking out, and I followed every single thing I could find religiously. And there's one thing that stands out more than anything else. This fucking article right here. We screwed up on Halo 2. Yeah, you can say that again. This article is where a couple guys who worked on Halo 2 talk about all the mistakes they made, how they didn't have enough time, and all the titanic improvements promised in Halo 3. And there is some truth to this if what I just talked about is anything to indicate. But the 16-year-old me couldn't see what Bungie was up to with this article, and pretty much every other article. With the way the article is structured and the word choices that were used here, Bungie was playing a little mind trick, trying to mentally downgrade the quality of Halo 2 to any Halo fan who read this article while hyping up Halo 3. And they did a pretty good job with it because legions of fans were chomping at the bit waiting to buy what we thought was going to be the greatest game ever made. And not just this article. Every piece of news about Halo 3 was like this, hyping up every little thing to be some type of genre-transcending improvement. Now, a decent portion of this is my fault for falling for the hype train, but I think any rational person can agree that the hype train for Halo 3 was obnoxious. I mean, this thing had everything from its own version of Mountain Dew all the way to ads at the fucking Super Bowl. Like, are you serious? Does anyone have any idea how much ads at the Super Bowl cost? It's a lot. No wonder it was the biggest launch in entertainment history at the time, but still, the ad campaign for Halo 3 was fucking disgusting. Yet many people fell for it hook, line, and sinker, and I was one of them. I remember buying Crackdown at full price just to get access to the multiplayer beta. And I ended up loving Crackdown far more than the beta. In fact, I don't have a single good memory with the beta. And I pre-ordered the limited edition. This one right here with the little art book, but there was a problem. Because apparently the cases weren't built properly, so the discs got loose and rattled around, and when I took mine out to see, it was scratched up pretty badly. There was a news article about this, and it said the scratches didn't affect the discs, but I wasn't taking any chances. Now, the person at the desk was kind enough to open up a couple others for me, and the same thing. And then, for some stupid reason, I asked the dumbest fucking question I had ever asked anyone up to that point in my life. Hey, do you have an extra Legendary Edition? Now, I heard there was a small scandal about this. Bungie was only supposed to make a certain number of these. However many of them got pre-ordered, that's how many they were supposed to make, because many people were going to buy them and sell them on eBay for a huge profit. But Bungie apparently decided to make an extra 500 of them, which completely screwed over all the people who pre-ordered them. Now, I can't find anything confirming that's true, but regardless of whether it is, I was able to get my hands on one. And it was the biggest waste of money I ever spent at that point in my life. Like, there goes the fucking neighborhood. Now, Halo 3 isn't a bad game. It's certainly a lot better than Halo 2. It plays a lot better, it's much better put together, and at the very least it doesn't feel like it was rushed out the door in a matter of months, but make no mistake, with only one exception, it's an average run-of-the-mill shooter. Everything it does had been done before, and better, including Forge Mode. A lot of people like to tout this little object placer as something that was new and revolutionary for gaming, which it wasn't. PC games had been doing stuff like this for well over a decade, and much better, as in having the ability to make your own map from the ground up on almost every single occasion. And of course, once I pointed this out, the person I'd be debating would suddenly switch gears and say, oh well, for console gaming it is, which again, it wasn't, because people evidently never played Far Cry Instinct's Predator, which had a full map maker. It was released a year before Halo 3, and if it makes any difference, it was also exclusive to the 360. Now, the exception I mentioned earlier is theater mode. I love this thing, and it's something every video game should have. Not just how you can stop, rewind, and speed up your gameplay clips, but also being able to detach and move the camera around as you want. That made making machinima ridiculously easy, and for many people, that was their first experience making machinima. It's an amazing feature, even if you just want to watch your multiplayer clips and see what you did wrong or what you could have done better, because you can also swap to the perspective of any other player as well, so that opens up a huge opportunity for anyone to better their gaming skills. Unfortunately, as cool as this is, it doesn't have any effect on the actual game. It's just something where you can watch your old gameplay clips or record for making machinima. And it was sadly limited to multiplayer only because you couldn't rewind the campaign clips for some reason, although by the time Reach rolled around you could, but you couldn't hear, and that made filming in the campaign extremely tough. But if I had to sum up Halo 3 in a more accurate word, it would be anticlimactic, because it doesn't feel grand like a conclusion to a trilogy should be. What should have happened, if you ask me, is Earth would be hanging in the balance, the Covenant would be inches away from wiping out the human race, and the only way there could be any salvation for any of this would be for Master Chief to go on a journey stretching from the slums of Brazil all the way to the furthest galaxy beyond the stars, where he would find the Save the Day key, whatever that is, and return. Parts would fly, flames would flail, and there would be many, many bodies as we wrapped up this trilogy, all the while the playlist from Akatosh's iPod played in the background. But what we got instead was a story that felt like it was there only because it had to be there. I'll say this much, what I like is that it doesn't feel like Master Chief did all the work by himself, at least with taking down the Covenant. That definitely felt like it was a group effort, and I would have liked to have seen what some of the other characters were up to during the story. Kinda like Halo 2. That's one thing I always liked about that game. It showed us the other side of the story and what the Covenant were like to an extent, which was completely abandoned in pretty much every game after that. Overall, it feels like 2/3 of the story is missing here. And even everything else, it's so lukewarm, so meh. It's almost like I'm playing a shooter that's made out of plastic. Plastic that's decently molded and put together, but still plastic. I don't want to sit around firing a gun that sounds like a pop gun and has all the punch of a Nerf gun. I want to feel like the supposedly badass motherfucker the Chief is always made out to be, and I just don't when I'm playing Halo 3. But enough of my rambling. It's not like it's going to magically change what happened, because what happened, happened. Bottom line, I was expecting a Titanic super game, I didn't get one, and I was more than bummed out, I was legitimately depressed. And I don't have the foggiest idea as to why, nor do I care anymore. It probably had something to do with my home life because that was rapidly becoming a nuclear dumpster fire at the time, so if I'm recalling this correctly, I guess video games were my happy little way of escaping things, and when something I was really looking forward to let me down as much as it did, that brought down the nice little curtain with it, and the only thing I was able to stare at now was the ugly truth. And that's pretty much it. There's plenty of other stupid and downright embarrassing things that happened after, like how I bought some of the map packs even though I already despised the game and don't even like multiplayer. Yeah, I was either a masochist or an idiot, probably both. Or maybe I just couldn't run away because I felt I had to get at least some of my money out of this, and yet all that ended up happening was the right hook became the left. But I'm not going to talk about that anymore, or anything else that happened after, because there are some things that are best off being left in the past, and this is one of them. But I do have to thank Halo 2 and 3 for a couple things, because they taught me some of the best life lessons I've ever learned. The first one is you don't always get what you pay for. I wasted $130 of my money on the Legendary Edition, and for what? Which leads me into the second lesson. Don't ever buy a game at full price, because all you have to do is wait a little bit, and before you know it, the game will be at a huge discount. If it's a multiplayer game and the servers are a ghost town by the time you wait to buy it, it probably wasn't worth playing to begin with. And number 3, the most important one of all. Form your own opinion. Don't ever fall for the hype train, or groupthink, or crowd psychology, whatever you want to call it. Don't go with the group just because. Experience it for yourself and find your own conclusion before making a judgment. And these 3 lessons can be applied to more than video games. They can be applied to pretty much anything in life. And to everyone who has watched and stuck with my channel, this is the one thing I've always tried to teach every one of you over the years. It's impossible to overstate just how important these lessons are to learn. And there is one last thing I can thank these 2 games for. Shortly after Halo 3 was released was also the time I stopped trying to copy Armake21. Yeah, for those of you that don't know, back when I discovered his videos in July 2007, he was the guy that inspired me to start making videos myself. And during my earliest videos, I was trying to be like him, with all the forced anger, cursing, and screaming, except I wasn't good at it. But after the shock of Halo 3 faded off and I started going on a crusade to try and expose the game to the general public for the overrated, painfully average game that it really was, that's when my channel changed into an early form of what it is today. So I guess we can thank these 2 games for making me and the channel into what we are? Seems like they did something good for the world after all. Or made it worse, depending on your opinion of me, but regardless. Where do we go from here? Well, I'm done talking about these 2 games for good. As far as I know right now, I'll never review them because I don't have the motivation or the interest, and there's no point anymore. But that doesn't mean I'm done talking about Halo in general. I may very well make Halo videos in the future. In fact, I've been kicking around the idea of remaking my reviews for Halo Reach and ODST, because I still stand by what I said about them for the most part. And I think a nice little remake would be well in order, but that's not in the pipeline right now. That being said, I do have more reviews in the pipeline, one of which just needs to be put together at the time of me putting this video out. And will hopefully be out shortly after this, so stay tuned. Alright kids, thanks for watching. If you're already subbed to the channel or are about to, be sure to hit the bell so you get notified when I post a video, hit the like button, and give me some feedback. I don't care if it's good or bad.